be.
We're about to be.
Well, we're here.
We are. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. You know, you have not been well. And
I'm still not 90. Only about 99%.
well, you had a horrible head cold.
2 weeks it took to get rid of it.
Oh.
And so it is finally gone. And you know what? They're telling us, get your free flu shots.
You may have already had it.
I've never had a flu shot, and the people who I've known who have had the flu shot get a flu immediately after they take the shot.
I'm Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which we haven't done in several weeks.
It's been a while.
And Mr. Rayo is back. I thought this would be a good day to do it because, we have the anniversary today. Scott
Sandy.
Scott Briller, who is the chairman on the chat board, is always very good about reminding me with regards to certain dates and anniversaries, and he mentioned it to me 2 days ago. Today is the 7th anniversary of Hurricane Sandy. So I thought I brought up a few maps that we could take a look at that I thought were pretty interesting, and also we have. We have, of course, another, what looks like another rain event, and for some areas a big rain with big wind, maybe for a brief time Friday morning when the front sweeps on through.
It's interesting. You look at the parameters for possible convection, and they're all very, very low. I'm not sure whether or not we'll get away without seeing any kind of lightning and thunder. If we do see it, it'll probably come in the dark of the night, late Thursday night.
That's what I thought. I put it in. I looked at the late GFS. I was kind of bullish on at least the amount of rain being produced. And SPC has us right on the edge of general thunderstorms. It has marginal risk up into south central Pennsylvania. It wouldn't take very much to nudge it up. And I think that'll depend on this onshore flow layer that we're in now. If the warm front gets through and pushes up far enough into New England, maybe there will be a few rumbles of thunder.
I think for the trick-or-treaters on Thursday, I said, at least in my analysis, that the steadiest rain would come between 11 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, and then I think things are going to peter off a bit, which may be good if whoever's going to be out and about, let's say Thursday evening, it may be just a light drizzle or something. And then later on Thursday night, or as we just talked about Friday morning, with the actual frontal passage, that's when we may get a brief burst of heavier rain and maybe some convection too.
We should mention, by the way, that Lee Goldberg of WABC TV might be watching tonight because he is a huge fan, yes, of ours. We're very close.
No, Lee is a good guy. He's one of the good ones.
Good. So maybe he's got an in at Disney, and they can put us on their free streaming service. Sure, because we'll be as popularly watched as, say, repeats of Game of Thrones and all the other shows or whatever they're going to have on.
Hey, look, when we get into a big storm situation, and we've seen this in the wintertime, you can't buy buy a ticket. You don't buy a ticket to watch us, but we get a tremendous number of people who come right to us to get the latest details on what may happen.
Oh, also, in the interest of equal time, I should mention that Lonnie Quinn might be watching from Channel 2 because he and I are very close as well.
Right. Well,
just in case you're watching, Lonnie.
So you know what we ought to do? You and I and Lonnie and Lee should get together for a brunch or a
works
lunch
for me.
One of these fine days.
As long as they're buying, because... I think we're going to be. We may not have sufficient
funds in a few weeks, right?
So I brought up the track of Hurricane Sandy, and one of the things, Joe. I mean, you and I weren't really in contact during that period, and I was I was not working on a regular basis at the time, and one of the things that struck me early on was that the setup looked like this was going to be something very different from what we usually see with hurricanes when they track up off the East Coast.
This is called the Superstorm Sandy, but there have been many, many tropical cyclones that have passed by the immediate New York area that have been far stronger in terms of Well, for example, a good example would be Donna in 1960.
Right.
I think that caused like wind gusts to 115 miles an hour at Newark Airport. Sandy was nothing like that in terms of strength. What makes Sandy stand out against all of the other storms is, as we see on the screen here, that most unusual track, and we ended up being in the worst part of the storm, the northeast quadrant. And when that storm came on shore, we were getting winds and we were getting tremendous waves from the ocean hitting the Jersey Shore on Long Island from a direction that we never usually see with a hurricane.
Right, and the coming in from the southeast is what really, cinched it here. You just basically had the whole ocean being pushed into that almost 90-degree coastline running from New Jersey to Long Island. So clearly that was going to be a big problem as we saw it going forward. A couple of things that were notable in the track was the fact that you had it reach Category 4 strength, then it kind of weakened a little, and it strengthened again. At the point where it made landfall, it was designated post-tropical because of the fact that it spread out. The gales spread out for hundreds of miles. You didn't have, really, that tight core anymore, and it really did start to look, very non-tropical. But that didn't make it any less in terms of impact. And we've talked about it before. The fact that they made it non-tropical was actually a plus because of the fact that a lot of homeowners' insurance policies up and down the coast now have these hurricane deductibles. So if the storm comes ashore as a tropical system, as a hurricane, then those hurricane deductibles kick in, which are, tens of thousands of dollars or more.
Right.
So that, certainly was a plus from that standpoint.
That I think the strongest winds, at least in the Hudson Valley, I think at Westchester County Airport in Harrison, or White Plains, if you will, the strongest winds were like 66 miles an hour, and we had seen many a nor'easter with winds as strong or even stronger than that.
Right.
So again, it was not the fact that this was the most potent storm of the century, or indeed, as the nickname, superstorm. It was just simply a fact that it took that most unusual track relative to all the other storms that came before it, and that track, a sou'easter, I guess you can call it.
Right. Well, we had hours on Long Island where I am. We had hours and hours and hours of 60 to 70 mile an hour winds with some higher gusts. I pulled up the surface map of it, and you had this stationary frontal boundary running up and down the Appalachians. And
Now wait a minute. Now hold on for a second.
Yes.
Is this because it says Saturday? And I don't think...
Yes, this is Saturday. This is before landfall. This is before landfall.
All right.
So this is in the setup. I moved it along. I took it out of the Caribbean.
Right. Okay.
So this is when it was off the east of Florida.
Because it was a Monday when it hit.
Correct. Right. And it was that Sunday night into Monday. And when I'm going to move it along here, so you can the lowest pressure is there on the center right at the far right in the middle of the frame there, 961 millibars. The track was actually northeast, and yet while this was going on, usually when storms are moving northeast in this position, they're done and they're gone, and not a factor for the most part. And yet we all saw what the upper air looked like, which I'm going to get to in a moment. And at the upper air just came down. You had a cutoff low that just kind of dropped down and just swallowed it up and turned it northward, and then eventually turned it northwestward. So at the point we were here at Sunday evening, Sandy was well off the North Carolina coast.
Right.
But the gradient was beginning to tighten. And now I'm going to just keep on going here. So now we're into Monday morning. And there it is. It starts to suddenly, it's out at 70, where usually they're going to keep on going. But you saw that last jump there. I'll just run it back a frame. There it goes. So we'll do it again. And there it is. Just makes that northwest move. Still being classified as a tropical system here. But now we're going into Monday afternoon and Monday night. And this is where we just got, hammered with that very tight gradient. And the landfall occurring right around Seaside Park, New Jersey.
And don't forget,
moving inland.
What was it, the Rockaways that had a whole entire block or street that was on fire during that storm?
I believe so. And the pressure here is 954 millibars. But again, look at how when you look at the isobars here, it tells you just how far spread out this all was in terms of the coverage and the scope of the storm, covering everybody. The last isobar is at Chicago. I mean, that's 1,000 miles. I mean, that's pretty far.
Yeah, that's.
And of course, I can't go out. I could go out. I'd have to find it, but then it wasn't many days after that with the upper feature that came down that followed that we wound up with 3 to 9 inches of snow on Long Island. That was about 10 days later, I believe.
Right.
But all of this was tied together. I remember joking around thinking that the only thing we haven't had recently is locusts.
Yeah.
But
And that was the night. That was the day after Election Day. Yeah, I think.
I believe.
Yes, it was. It was
yes.
the day after Election Day in 2012 when we had snow, and that was only about 10 days, you mentioned, after we had Sandy. It was crazy.
Right. So actually, here's Wednesday. Let's add a day, 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 and go to. Well, there it is. That's your system. Whoops. So let me go back. Oh. I kept adding a day. Hold on. All right, so here we go. This is actually Tuesday, Election Day,
Right.
November 6th. And then there's a low develops east of the Delaware coast, south of Long Island. And you actually look at these temperatures, Joe, that were up in northern New England. 17, I guess that's Montpelier all the way up there. 24 at Albany.
Right.
That was cold air with a 1026 high.
Right.
In some respects, you think back to last November when we had the cold wedge come down the East Coast in the middle of November, but this was a setup, and the cold air was marginal near the coastline, but it was certainly enough to produce heavy wet snow in some areas.
Right.
And particularly, it was western Suffolk and Nassau County that got significant snowfalls, and that closed the schools for an additional week because they couldn't plow the wet snow because all the trucks were working on the Sandy
power lines and
recovery.
everything else and all the trees.
So it really, it was not good timing. Let's put it that way. And I do have the upper air just to show you. We were just mentioning earlier how starting from the first frame should be coming up. So this is the first frame. You can see Sandy's offshore. Deep trough dives in, just picks it up, swallows it, cuts off. I mean, this is the kind of thing, if you were a winter weather lover, this is what you would be looking for with regards to a winter storm.
And this is also with Sandy, is where the European model got the title the King, because the European, as some of you may know, 6 days in advance had the almost exact plot of the path that Sandy took. A lot of the tracks 6 days in advance were suggesting the storm would go out to sea and not be much of a problem. And the European, 6 days in advance, had the storm actually doing what it actually did, which was to curve to the north and west, because also of that big blocking high over the northeast and eastern Canada, which precluded Sandy from moving northward.
Right.
So, and then we said, then 10 days later we had another big blocking high, a cold high, which set the stage for the snowstorm. You know what we would have thought as kids? We were growing up in the Bronx, and we were always like, looking for massive storms to get excited about, and to actually say, first you're going to get a tropical storm, a tropical cyclone, a hurricane, and then 10 days later you're going to get a major snowstorm.
Right. That was something I don't think we
couldn't have even
envisioned.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to pull the window up for just a moment, and we'll leave it up here, and because I want to go to what's going on. Let's go to current weather and take a look at what's happening. Actually, before we even do the satellite, let's start off with this. I want to start off with these watches and warnings because I looked it up. So far this month, Denver has received at least a trace of snowfall for 8 days this month. And this is October,
Pretty good
okay?
in October, yeah.
And right now, by the way, just in case you don't know and haven't looked, it's 11 above there right now with snowfall.
I looked, and in fact I was, for space.com, they wanted me to do a column on people perhaps taking their telescopes out and doing a trick-or-treat with the kids, showing them the moon and whatever else. And in the column, I said, if you're reading this out somewhere in the central or western states, where on Thursday evening the temperature is going to be like 5 or 10 above zero, I mean, do kids actually go trick-or-treating when the temperature is that cold out?
Yeah,
out
well,
there?
you'd be surprised. So,
You see Linus out in the pumpkin patch at 10 degrees. And
yeah. The watches and warnings, we've got numerous winter storm warnings up in Colorado and in some areas in Wyoming. A lot of winter weather advisories that have now been put up across Kansas, southern Nebraska, northern Missouri, and into Illinois, just out not too far from Chicago, because once the low pulls eastward, those areas are going to see, a lot of these areas are going to see their first snowfalls of the season. Some of them have already seen it, but this
Right.
will be in addition. Now, we still have some big problems. I just want to mention what's going on in California because of the fact that they still have these, the power outages going on with the strong winds. You've got red flag warnings up and down the state, high wind, wind advisories, high wind warnings, high wind watches. So this continues to be a problem in California. While you got all this troughing, just to, when you go to the east, all the energy seems to be piling on into the Rockies right now early on. And there's plenty of cold air. It's all up in the plains and in the northern Rockies. And
now I would assume that arc of blue over Texas might be freeze or frost.
that's frost advisories.
Yeah.
That, we got those winter weather advisories down to Amarillo, so they're going to see snow for the second time, I believe, this month. So let's move this out of the way.
Yeah.
And we will, I want to get WPC's map, which is here somewhere. Hang on. So we can take a look at what's going on, because we've had, quite a bit of rain lately, and we're about to get quite a bit more, because WPC is actually fairly bullish. Just inland of the coast, Joe, it's showing, 1 to 2 inches and 2 to 3 inch rains in Pennsylvania, upstate New York, and in New England, where northern New England's gotten hit with quite a bit of rain lately, and of
Right.
course a ton of rain over the next 7 days in areas that were, flash droughted, was what I've been calling it. That 3-week stretch we had September to October, where it was in the mid to upper 90s every day across the south, and basically baked them dry because there was hardly any shower or thunderstorm activity in that stretch. But you're getting a solid soaking here. Away from the coast, but areas inland, north and in western North Carolina, South Carolina, northwestern half of Georgia, down to Alabama, Mississippi, seeing several to many inches of rain over the next 7 days. So that's good news for them.
You'd like to, somehow like to trade our weather for maybe a day or two with California, which has been, again, bone dry.
And they're bone dry. That continues as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Precip's actually in the northern plains and up in the western lakes, where it's been a bit busy rain-wise, is actually kind of relaxing here temporarily. And I think when I was looking at the longer range, I thought maybe we would go into a bit more of a, let's call it a relaxed period, in the sense that, after this storm on Thursday, I'm not really anticipating anything major to happen, but we'll get to that in a moment. Let's go back to this this map, and we'll bring it up to the top here, and we'll take a look at the. Actually, before we even do that, Joe, I just want to bring up the water vapor imagery, because we can see the setup here, and I'm looking at the mid levels of the atmosphere. We're sitting in a lot of low clouds and fog. And not that much fog, but some patchy fog and drizzle and some light rain. And yet, when you look at the mid levels, which is what I have here, they're actually, we were sitting in some rather dry air at the mid levels of the atmosphere. It's only now that it's starting to pull away, and you're seeing that setup here for Thursday with this feeder of tropical moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, kind of what happened on Sunday, and then you've got this really deep trough out here. In the Central Rockies here, dropping down this upper low. So it looks like the pieces of an impressive rain event are certainly showing up here on the water vapor imagery.
Yeah, and by the way, tomorrow, I don't know what I didn't get a chance to check out your forecast. I always try to check each other out, but for tomorrow, I actually mentioned. For part of the day, the sun may put in a cameo appearance.
You know what? It wouldn't shock me if it peaked on through, especially if we're not deep in an onshore flow
Right.
here. We're kind of on the edge of it.
Right.
And there's warm air just to our south. And I think if that nudges up we could want, even today as I was driving in, because those mid-levels were so dry,
Right.
it was
looked like it was
drizzling and
trying.
light rain, but you could
Lightening
see
up,
it
yeah.
was
Right.
the brightening that was going on
I think tomorrow
upstairs.
it just might be enough to, and whatever sun we get tomorrow, I think will push temperatures maybe into the mid 60s, and then, Joe, and we haven't even touched upon this, we've been talking about the precipitation, but Thursday, if there's any one good thing we can say about Halloween 2019, it's going to be a mild Halloween.
Yeah, it'll be up into the low 70s.
Upper 60s, low 70s.
Now here's your onshore flow. So I mean, we're talking 50s and low 60s. It's not like we're talking 40s and low 50s.
Right.
But you get down into Virginia, North Carolina, it's all in the mid and upper 60s here. So
Right.
I mean, this is not, this is warmish air. And the onshore flow is just weak enough that once the wind turns southeast or south, that warmer air is just going to come right up.
Right.
And then, of course, you got this long snaking frontal boundary and the energy with the low that's back through Colorado. So that's the one that is going to come out and intensify into a pretty strong storm once it gets over into the lakes.
Right. And that storm will not move directly at us. It'll actually be well to our north and west, but like snapping the whip, so to speak, the front that it's associated with that coming through here late Thursday night and early Friday morning. And that is what may lead to a brief burst of convection, or if not convection, a brief burst of some very heavy rain. And again, the way I'm looking at this, during the day Thursday, midday to the afternoon, maybe one significant wave of moisture may peter out a little bit for Thursday evening, perhaps for the trick-or-treaters to look out a little bit. And then late Thursday night, or more likely toward Friday morning, that's when we'll have the front, and that's when we may pick up actually the heaviest.
Yeah, here's the GFS, the new GFS on Wednesday. You've got rain throughout the lower Mississippi Valley into the southeast. It's not doing very much other than whatever patchy stuff is still around, remnant of the onshore flow, but those isobars are turning south. And now you're going to start to see this low head up toward the Great Lakes. The snow comes out of Colorado, moves into Kansas and Oklahoma and northern Missouri and Iowa, and then eventually to just northwest of, well, not just northwest, but technically speaking, it's northwest of Chicago, in southern Wisconsin, northwestern Illinois. And there's your low as it heads up near Lake Huron and just gets really wrapped up here by the time we get to, this is at 2 a.m. on Friday.
Right.
And here's a close-up view of this. That's a pretty solid front here, and at least, at the very least, even if we don't see any thunderstorms, you certainly are seeing, these are radar echoes by the GFS. I mean, that certainly, to me, implies that there's probably some thunderstorms in there somewhere.
And it's a fairly tight little pressure gradient that we're looking at as well, and rapidly shifting winds. We talk about the velocity of the winds, but sometimes when the wind suddenly shifts, suddenly goes around from one direction to another direction, that in itself could cause some damage.
And this will probably happen around 4 or 5 a.m.
Right.
And then after that, it looks like the weekend to me looks pretty reasonable. It'll be a little on the chilly side, but nothing crazy cold. And one of the things I noticed on the longer term, Joe, is let me just bring up the upper air here. I was looking at the upper air. So of course, we've got this trough that's getting kicked out into New England. There's another trough that's actually swinging around for the weekend, but the problem here is that it's very broad.
That's Saturday night.
Right, and it gets even broader as we go through the weekend. So there probably will be some kind of wave on this front offshore that'll pass well out to the east and be of no real consequence. But it does keep things rather chilly around here into the start of next week. Then it kind of pulls up, then you get another arm that comes down. To me, this looks a bit more relaxed in the sense that, yes, we will have cold fronts coming through every 3 or 4 days, but I don't think we're going to have back-to-back major systems again. After this one, I think we go, just, I guess, kind of...
No, I actually said...
like an pattern.
I said after the last shower moves out early Friday morning, that from then there on, all through into maybe Tuesday of next week, it'll be dry. We'll have... rather cool or chilly conditions, but it should be A-okay. So
yeah, I'm not really seeing anything. It's kind of an interesting looking upper air in the sense that there are some connections here where there's colder air from Canada that tries to come down, but it doesn't make it that far south. On the other hand, one of the interesting things to note in the longer term is you've got higher than normal pressures building up across the pole, across Greenland, and on the other side from Alaska. So it looks like the jet in the longer range wants to kind of migrate further south, maybe for the second half of the month. But for now, at least after whatever we get through the next couple of days, it should turn a little bit a bit more relaxed, as I've been saying.
And relaxed is good.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being a little more relaxed. We go crazy sometimes. Oh, by the way, before I come back, we go to the chat board for a little bit. I just want to bring up. I do have the current radar, just to give everybody an idea of what's happening as of 7:30 Eastern time. So you can see the buildup of the rains in the southeast and across the Gulf states. This system has just like the one from Sunday, which had Olga, quote unquote, right. Olga, and then Nestor before that. Right. This one also has a tropical connection to it. It's not going to develop into much of anything. And on the satellite loop, on the U.S. loop, I have it up here somewhere. Where is it?
You mentioned Nestor. The most interesting thing to me about that storm was that, it looked for such a long time like most of the stuff would pass by to our south, and then all of a sudden, on the actual day of the event, it blossomed.
So it was like a huge wall of rain. But the clouds that you see down in the Gulf of Mexico and the northern Gulf actually came out of the northwest Caribbean and the Yucatan from yesterday, and it moved northward. So this system also has so that makes this 1, 2. This is 3 in a row, right? This is 3 systems in a row that we've had that have had some type of tropical influence coming out of the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. And as I've said many times, and you've heard me say it, that patterns don't repeat themselves exactly, but they do have a tendency to rhyme, and these rhyme.
Yeah. Yep.
So there.
And so, just looking out ahead, the marathon is on Sunday morning, and
yes.
I don't run marathons, but I know the runners like when it's nice and cool, and it's certainly going to be nice and cool at the start of the race on Sunday
it should
morning.
be kind of ideal. Maybe slightly on the breezy side, but temperature-wise, it'll be probably down in the low 40s, somewhere in the 40s at the start,
right.
Maybe near or over the low 50s by afternoon,
right? And
no worse than partly sunny skies. So I think that that's a good thing. Okay, so Aaron Yonkers Drum says that there is a high wind watch up for around Buffalo. Do the winds be expected to be strongest during the Halloween peak hours? Okay, so let me just take a look. Let's take a look at what's going on. I'm going to bring up the 10-meter wind here. We'll see what the GFS has to say with regards to the winds. Hang on, let me roll it back and then I'll pull it up on the screen. That's
Sunday, as we said, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Thursday night late into early Friday morning.
Well, that's for the coast.
Yeah.
It looks like for you, the strongest winds. This is for Buffalo. The strongest winds is they're really going to be Thursday night into Friday morning. So the daytime might be slightly breezy, but it's really Thursday night into Friday morning. And the winds over Lake Ontario actually start howling at about 50 knots Friday morning offshore. Right. But the surrounding areas are going to be sustained 20 to 35. So this is really more for later Thursday night into Friday morning for you, much like it is for us, but for different reasons. I'll bring up the window just so that you can see. Where did I hide? There it is.
This man has every map under the sun.
Allegedly. I just have to remember where I put them. Okay, because sometimes they're hiding. But here it is. This is the GFS. By the way, maps courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com, your go-to site for models. So this is the GFS for Thursday in western New York. There's nothing really, overly exciting about the winds there. But once you get into about 2 a.m., between 8 p.m. and 2 a.m., and the winds go to the west, this is when they really start howling at the yellow areas on land there from Buffalo west. That's sustained. Those are sustained gales. So you're probably going to have gusts up much higher than that.
Right, right. Boy, it looks like, another month and we'll be, maybe even not even another
I'm gonna
month,
turn
we'll
on
start getting the lake effect.
Going to start turning on the lake effect.
Yeah.
Actually, a little bit of it may get turned on this weekend, if only for a brief
Right, do
time.
you realize I saw on the European that the 540 thermal ribbon is going to be passing through the tri-state area at about daybreak on Sunday morning? And I said, thank goodness it's going to be nice and dry. We don't have any kind of disturbance to be...
Ruthless Goat is in Colorado, not too far from Denver. And he's got what do you have now, 10 or 11 inches on the ground and a temperature of 11? Was it 9 inches with a temperature of 11? I mean, it was just crazy what's going on there. But he's been reporting. He actually sent me a video on Facebook, which I tried to share, but unfortunately I've been put in Facebook jail again for apparently sharing inappropriate weather content. I don't know what the reason is.
Facebook is crazy.
Yeah, they're nuts. I have no idea.
I don't know how many of you out there are Honeymooner fans. In fact, I think everybody is a fan of the Honeymooners. It's so popular, it's still running 60 years after the first. And there's a Honeymooners Facebook page, which I'm a part of because I'm a big Honeymooners fan. And one of my best friends, Dennis Cassia, was banned for like a week or suspended for a week because he used a quote from the Honeymooners. I won't say what the quote is because they may take us down.
Right, we won't.
But
the point is that they've just gotten crazy with some of the stuff that they're doing.
It was from an episode that was aired just this past weekend involving Alice's sister getting married and getting very upset because her new husband said things to her and man. Well, anyway, he used that quote from her. And he got suspended or banned for like a week.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Alfred Phillips, he's of course up in Wainwright, Alaska, on the North Slope.
Well, of course.
Sea ice right now is at its lowest point on record.
Really?
Yes. 2012 was the old record. We're below that right now. I saw Judah Cohen mentioning that the sea ice in the Arctic regions is almost is at its lowest point ever observed.
I noticed that for a number of days up in Alaska they had abnormally warm temperatures, so that certainly would go a ways to doing that.
Well, there's no snow on the ground in Fairbanks, which for Halloween is the first time since I think 70 some odd years. So definitely is warm out there, but you can some have made the case that one argument to look at is the fact that it's the warmness in the polar regions is an idea that would favor the colder winters in the middle latitudes. Now, whether that means, everybody seems to automatically think that means it's in the east. It doesn't necessarily mean it's in the east. It could mean that it's in the west.
Right.
So you have to keep all possibilities open here. And what I often have said, how looking at the weather in October, but particularly November into early December, is trying to use that month to try to gain some clues as to which way the winter is going to go.
You're mentioning snow, and all of a sudden, in my head, a bell rang. We mentioned that this is the 7th anniversary of Sandy.
Yeah, so this is also the
8th anniversary of the incredible early season snowfall. And I live up in Putnam Valley, Joe, which is 50 miles as the crow flies north of Midtown Manhattan. And during that storm, 8 years ago tonight, I had 14 inches of heavy snow. And a lot of the trees still had not shed their leaves yet. And all I had to do was step outside in front of my front door and listen. And every so often, it sounded like there were hunters out in the woods shooting off rifles. They wasn't shooting off rifles. Those were branches and tree limbs that were snapping, and sometimes whole trees coming down. And I had, I don't even want to think about it anymore. The funny thing is that I didn't get very much wind damage from Sandy, but yet that snowstorm the previous year,
right,
I had tremendous damage from the trees all over my front lawn.
Well, here it is. I brought the surface map up for you. This was on Saturday, October 29th, 2011. There's your low. This was probably the most the most wintry looking setup that we had for that whole winter of 2011, 2012.
Right.
I remember going up to New Hampshire for the New Hampshire primary because my daughter was working for CBS at the time, and going up there in early January and not a I saw, first of all, there was nothing on the ground anywhere. While I was there, I saw about a handful of flurries with temperatures in the upper 30s.
Wow.
I could do this at home, I thought.
Right.
But it was just that kind of a winter.
Right.
And just to, we'll just roll it along a little bit. That was your October snowstorm.
Right.
And you look at these temperatures, they were all marginal, 30, 31, 32 across upstate New York and New England.
It was a heavy, wet snowfall. I mean, the ratio... the snow to rain ratio was probably, I would say, like 6 or 8 to 1 as opposed to the normal 10 to 1 ratio. This was certainly not your puffy, fluffy, low density snow. This was your heavy duty, concrete type snow landing on trees, which again were still in many areas still in leaf. And those trees and branches, they were snapping and coming down every which way. And this storm, this winter storm, this early winter, or, it wasn't even winter yet, obviously. It was not even halfway through fall. This came about, 5 or 6 weeks after Irene.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like over a foot of rain with Irene. It was not a very good year for...
No, it really wasn't. Let's see. Hang on one second here. Let's go back to that. When would the first flakes around? Urban Drone Photography 610 asks, when will the first flakes fly around here? And he says December 4th.
Usually I think the first snowfall or the first sightings of snow, well, not the first sightings of snow, but the first significant snowfall is within a few days of December 1st. So,
isn't the mean first inch like December 12th for New York City?
Or
December 9th
or
12th. Central, yeah, but every place is different,
But in recent years, and we've talked about this many times here on Joe and Joe, is the fact that in the last 20 or 25 years, December, which really was like you get a little bit of snow, December has turned out to be, a major month for snow in the New York area.
It's gone. That's worked in cycles. The 30-year period from 1970 to 2000. Remember doing the math. The average snowfall in December was that 30 years was like 2 inches.
Right.
And then the long-term average is around 5.
Right.
And in the last 20 years, the December average has been, I think it's above 6.
Yeah.
Because we've had a couple of really big snowstorms along the way.
I remember one about 5 or 7 years ago.
Well, the Boxing Day storm.
The Boxing Day storms and everything. But even one that was even earlier than that, I think on a weekend, a couple of weekends before Christmas or whatever, we had like, out on Long Island, it was like 10 inches or 12. It's been crazy in the month of December.
Yeah, it sure is. I'm just trying to run through any additional questions. Is everybody's the snow lovers on board are all they're just starting to get the itch now. So Ruthless Goat, where he is in Colorado, 8 inches near in Loveland, Colorado, 8 on the ground.
Right.
I think that's your 4th accumulating snow event, and it's just the month of October. By the way, that's not to say it can't just shut off and suddenly you won't.
Right.
You won't get as much snow during the months where you would normally expect it. That actually probably has a higher probability of happening than not.
Sometimes you get all of that as one big lump in the very beginning of the season or preseason, and then during the time when you expect it, nothing is happening. So we'll see. Right now, the western United States has been abnormally cold and much colder than here in the east.
Right.
And but the tide can turn very quickly. Can it?
Mark G was with essentially like you in that snowstorm. 18 inches, crack, pop, boom, trees snapping, lost power for 2 weeks. Northern Fairfield County. You're not that
Connecticut,
far from where
if
you
I
are.
remember correctly, Connecticut really got hammered, and there were a lot of places that did not have power for many days. I think I lost power for like 4 or 5 days. Thankfully, we had the generators, and hopefully the generator will work this upcoming season.
Scott Briller, thanks for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it. Congrats on the FiOS career, he says.
Oh, I have to tell you, the best part about coming here in December of 2016 is working with this guy. We wanted to
do this for a while.
We wanted to do this for
true.
more than a while. We were back at News 12 in the News 12 days, in News 12 Long Island, when he was the morning guy and I was the occasional fill-in. And I always used to fantasize, like, if there was ever an opening that the two of us could work together. And it wasn't until now, the tail end of our respective careers, that we found.
Well, wait, I said you and I started our careers roughly together.
Right.
And we're sort of finishing it. Well, not quite finishing. It's a different world now, because I'm going to be doing what I'm doing now, which I do every day on the live streams, and that's going to continue. Right. My live streams, my websites, my weather apps, et cetera, et cetera. And you're going to do your things that you're doing with astronomy and everything
well, I'll tell you,
else.
if I don't connect with a broadcasting outlet, and that's what I'm still trying to do. If any television station out there is interested in my services,
see, look, all of this would be so easily solved if Lee would just go to Disney, go to Bob Iger, and say, "Look, Robert," or unless you're close, then you can just call him Bobby, and just say, there's this incredibly great show on YouTube. They do nothing but talk about weather. It beats any reality show on there. Let's stream them on the free video service. You would only have to, let's just say that we'll have to take the decimal point and move it over a few places. But we're certainly open to the idea.
We know that weather, in every newscast, weather is the thing that drives the newscast. Take, for example, and I'm not making light of it because it was a terrible story today about the Cessna that crashed. And immediately, where did they go? They jumped immediately on the weather bandwagon and started asking their respective on-staff meteorologists for the weather conditions at the time of the crash.
Yep.
But
that's
weather, But weather,
and it may or may not have played a factor. They're going to find out afterward.
NTSB will find out. But the thing is that also during the wintertime, when there's even small talk about an impending big storm, who do they go to? It's the weather. Everybody goes to the weather. We drive the weather. The newscast, I should say. I had a conversation with Jim Cantori about this at one of the conventions a few years ago, and he said, "Yeah, we're the ones that they really tune into." You think back, Joe, to when we were growing up or whatever. They never let off the news with the weather.
I can remember how many times Alan Casper got cut to 20 seconds.
Right.
You come into work and all you do is 20 seconds.
But it used to be news, sports, and weather. Now all of a sudden, notice the line, not all of a sudden, but in recent years, the lineup is news, weather, and sports. Sports is now the one at the bottom of the newscast.
It is.
And at the top of the newscast, it's weather. So, again, if you really like, and as I was saying just a few moments ago, if there's a weather broadcasting outlet, either radio or television, that wants me, I'll be very happy to listen after the 15th of November. Otherwise, I think I'm exploring the possibility of going into teaching, maybe becoming an adjunct. Maybe one of the local colleges might be interested in I used to teach introductory meteorology at the Hayden Planetarium back in the 80s and early 90s, back in the Stone Ages, by the way. So.
All right, so shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, I got.
All right.
There's one question I wanted to ask you.
Go ahead.
Are you going to dress up as anything on Halloween, or?
Halloween is not my favorite holiday. That was a day where we used to go to the movies.
Okay.
In the middle of the afternoon. It was great. It's a great. By the way, it is a great time to go to the movies because there's no one there. If there's a movie that you want to see and you don't want to see it with crowds, go on Halloween afternoon. I'm a little bit of a Grinch when it comes to it.
But I could remember.
But over the years, we used to get, where I live is a development, and there's hardly any car traffic, and it was really nice because people would bring their kids there. So it's really, especially the little ones, so they could walk them around safely. Over the last few years, especially, the number of trick or treaters has really dwindled down.
Well, right.
People, they go to fixed parties.
Nobody comes to my house. I've lived up in Putnam Valley. I think the first year was like 2002. We had some kids. They'd come along. Nobody comes anymore.
Yeah, it's a different world.
But I can remember you and your missus, and if I'm incorrect, you can correct me on this. But wasn't there one year that you two went as two bags of groceries?
We won third place for that in at the party. Yeah, we were two. We made the bags of groceries. We got empty containers of different products and
Right.
kind of glued them together, and got the old post office brown wrap to send a package, and we created these paper bags.
And you mentioned going to the movies and not, there's hardly anybody goes to the movies. I don't know if you've ever done this. With my son, we went to a movie and we were the only ones in the theater. We were
I've
the
had
only
that.
two people in the theater. And by the way, the name of the movie, if you're wondering what was so bad that only two people showed up, it was MacGruber.
Oh,
I think it was an SNL bit that they eventually worked into making into a full-length movie. And we walked in, nobody else walked in. We were the only two people in the whole theater, which was kind of like a weird situation.
All right, let me make a couple of announcements. First off, special thanks to Livingston, Williamson, Thompson III, to Steve LaPointe, to Johnny Quest, and to Scott Burler. Thank you for hitting Super Chat tonight. I want to mention again, I mentioned it the other night, on Wednesday, November the 20th, I will be at the Bayonne Library in Bayonne, New Jersey, which, when you think about it, is a really good place for the Bayonne Library to be. But I will be there, I believe, at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Outside chance I might be wrong and it's at 6, but I'm thinking it's at 7. So, but I will let you know for sure. So do come out if you are in New Jersey. This may be your only opportunity for the rest of 2019. I've only had 2 library appearances this year. One was in Westwood, New Jersey, and the other one is going to be in in Bayonne, New Jersey. So this is your chance, November the 20th.
And you threw one of your library talks at me.
And I gave you one in Babylon.
That was
I am not Cranky Weather Guy on Twitter. I want to assure you, I am not Timothy Veltman. I am not. I swear. Okay, I am in awe of Cranky Weather Guy. If you don't follow him on Twitter, you should. If you're into weather, I mean, the guy really knows his stuff, and he actually, I'm actually one of only a handful of people that he follows. Which when I found that out, I was totally floored by that. But he's a very nice guy. I did have a brief conversation with him. I tried to get him to come on the live stream, but he keeps himself incognito, and I respect that. I have no idea who he is, and maybe one day I will find out, but I will never tell, even if I did.
I just realized something.
What else? It was one other thing.
I may actually have a chance. Now, due to circumstances beyond our control, I might actually be able to see your talk. We never were able to see. I never was able to see your talk because I had to work.
Oh, all right. Well, you certainly could, come out to
not doing
Bayonne,
it.
or when I have one on Long Island in Sachem, at the Sachem Library, come February. So I'll get the date on that. It's in the early part of February. So real quick, if you haven't downloaded my free weather app, the meteorologist Joe Chaffee weather app, do so. For Android or for iPhones, so add it to your phone. Even Joe has it.
No. Maybe Joe Rayo is the cranky weather guy. No, I am not.
He's not cranky weather guy.
I am not definitely not the cranky weather guy.
So download the free apps, and also download Angry Ben's weather app, the Angry Weatherman. Ben helps me out with my my New York City
Why are all these weather
website.
people cranky and angry?
Because they have but there's a point to it, because some of the stuff that runs in social media, as far as weather is concerned, is enough to make any weather professional cranky.
Right.
Because it's just out of control. This stuff is crazy. We had the GFS back a few days ago with the 300. It's already starting with silly season. It isn't even November, and it's got the 300-hour snowstorms on there. And, it's nuts. It's just nuts. All right, so we've got Weather in 5 tomorrow morning. Be sure you tune in for that. And, of course, web posts throughout the day tomorrow. If you're on the app, you'll get all your weather stuff, too. And then we'll see you back here tomorrow night on our regular live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Don't forget to set your clock back 1 hour on Saturday night.
That's right, because Sunday is, we go back to standard time.
Yes.
And the European comes out earlier.
Everything comes out early.
Yay!